Welcome to Legends in Leadership, brought to you by ISF and the Carrington Group. Legends in Leadership is an inspirational podcast featuring the stories of leaders who are making a difference. Our goal is to inspire you with the stories of leaders who come from humble beginnings, overcome challenges, and ultimately rise up to make a difference in people's lives.
Welcome to Legends in Leadership. This is Jason Smith, your host for today's episode. I'm a family officer with the Carrington Group, and my co-host on today's podcast are Dr. Blair Ritchie, Executive Director of ISF, and Tyler Tallman, fellow family officer with Carrington. Hello, guys.
Hey, good to be here.
Well, each episode we kick things off with some leadership trivia. We're fascinated by the stories of leaders who, like us, come from humble beginnings and rise up to lead and making a difference in people's lives. So Blair, what's our leadership trivia question for today?
Thanks, Jason. I got a fun one today. This one's near and dear to my heart as ISF director, because at ISF we work with kids who are aging out of foster care, have this dream for a college education, have overcome a lot. So this is a fun story. Today's Legend in Leadership trivia person actually was given up for adoption at the age of 9 months and had a dream of going to college. And while in college, his adoptive mother died. And that set him back. And just funding and everything else, he had to drop out of college. But along the way, he developed this love for computer design. And he got actually quite good at it. And managed to parlay a $1,200 investment with a few other buds of his into a database project for the CIA. They affectionately called that database project Oracle. And today, this business leader is one of the wealthiest billionaires in the world. And the company he founded is one of the most successful high-tech companies in the world. So I'll just push pause on that. Do you know who this living legend in leadership is? And I'll be back at the end of the podcast to give you the answer.
Great. Thank you, Blair. I've got one guess. So we'll see if maybe I figured this one out.
That's cheating, Jason. You already know who it is.
No, he doesn't.
Well, I'm excited today to welcome Rob Davis to our podcast. He is the founder of World Gaming Academy, and he's getting this effort up and going to bring eSports to a wider audience. So definitely looking forward, and welcome to the podcast, Rob.
Thank you. Great to be here.
We'd like to start sort of at the beginning of your journey, get to know you a little bit and maybe understand your background, where you come from, and what shaped you from your younger years.
Yeah, what a privilege to be here. Humbling in the sense of the title of Legends in Leadership. I'm not sure that I'm there yet, but I certainly have a love in my heart for leaders. Probably main reason being I grew up with a single mom. We never had a lot of money. My mom was a waitress most of my young life. I was kind of a latchkey kid because she worked in the evenings. I went to school, during the day. Of course, I was on my own a lot. We never wanted for food, or I always had shelter, but we never had much beyond that. And didn't grow up with a father. I had a relationship with him much later in my life, which was great until he passed away a few years ago. And for me, I had to I didn't really have any roles. I learned that, a real key from my mother was a work ethic. I mean, she just did what it took to provide for me. And I always appreciated that. So I always recognized that. But I really didn't have any leadership kinds of mentors or people that I could look to. So I spent, once I got kind of through my high school years, my time in college, I became fascinated with the study of leaders. World leaders, business leaders in any kind of segment. So I went on this frenzy for many years of reading a book a week, biography, autobiography about these world leaders, and until I could kind of narrow my list of mentors, male mentors, that I respected and admired. So this is very near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, great. So I'm curious, as you progressed through those younger years, getting into college, where did you go from there? What opportunities presented themselves you took advantage of?
So, my approach, well, let me say this. I dropped out of high school. It was not a good fit for me. I graduated on my own in my junior year. So I say dropped out, but I did finish on my own. Went to college. It's meant to be pre-med. I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon. My junior year, starting into my senior year, I dropped out, knew it wasn't for me. I just kind of knew I always had to be in business for myself. And so that journey was always in feeling like, so leadership's an interesting topic. It's confusing when you don't have a live mentor in your life, when you're thinking, why this doesn't fit for me. The mold says, go to school, go to college, move on to a career. But it was never in my DNA. I always felt suffocated in those environments. And so I always gravitated towards those kinds of leaders. Of all the people that I could tell you that I have immense respect for, I don't know, is it okay for me to say who my number one mentor was? Maybe not personally,
Absolutely.
but business-wise?
Absolutely.
Okay. So for me, it was Steve Jobs. I've probably read, watched, studied more about him than any 10 people that I know. Now, I'm not going to talk about his personal life and those other kinds of things, but in the sense of his effect, his leadership, to be able to get the best out of people, that's kind of what I always looked for. What is it that I could learn that would pull the best out of me, or that I could then take back and help to pull the best out of other people, right? I mean, I don't know what else leadership is other than to help lead the path and say, this is what you can do if you choose, but it's going to take this kind of effort to get there.
Right. So I'm curious, unwrap that a little bit more. So what were the top 2 or 3 things that you took away from some of your Steve Jobs reads that were really impactful for you?
I think that number one, for me, when we talk about leadership, and I believe this for many years, that leadership is a robe of responsibility, not a cloak of comfort. And I think that many times people aspire to a leadership role not understanding all the stuff that goes along with it, all the trolls, all the negative, all the pressure, all the responsibility. Because in the end of the day, if you're a true leader, the buck stops with you, right? The answer is here. You have to answer for your decisions. So with Steve Jobs, a lot of people are very hard on him for the harsh way he often dealt with people. But for me, I would look at it and say, understanding as much as I can the pressures that were on him to build a business and have an impact in 5 different industries required making very tough calls that were beyond, hey, look, I really like you, Tyler, or hey, Blair, you're a great guy, but you really stink at this and you need to move on. The ability to make those, stick with them, even though they were wrong sometimes, don't get me wrong. The ability to make the tough decisions, to ignore the criticism and be very focused on where you want to go and what you want to unlock. I mean, when no one could see that, whoever imagined that we'd want to take a phone and swipe our finger, right, to scroll through things. But when he had a vision with that or with the Mac and no one else really saw it, to be able to stick to that vision, make the tough decisions, hold to those tough decisions, and then pull the best out of people. By making them, well, let's be honest, making them work their face off.
Right.
That was really it. So that work ethic and the ability to make and stick to the hard decisions.
And Rob, I know you shared with me in other conversations, you built a very successful CrossFit gym here in North Texas, and you began that at a time that was really tough, a struggling time in your family and professional life. I'm curious, what leadership traits did you need when things were tough? And then what leadership traits did you need as that CrossFit opportunity became more successful?
That's a great question. It was, I would say it was probably more than tough. I mean, when you lose everything, going from debt-free, 6-figure income, kind of an environment, and you literally move my wife and I have been married for 30 years. We have 6 kids. We moved our entire family into the upstairs of a friend's house for, I always get it wrong, I think it was 4 months. And my wife says 3.5 or 4 months. But that being said, I think that when I had people that are dear friends, very respected in their careers, and people that I would, in most cases, follow their advice. I think one of the things that I learned there is I knew when I saw the CrossFit opportunity, and there's a whole long story to that, I knew where this was going. I knew where CrossFit was going to go. This is very early on, many years ago. And so I decided this is what I'm going to do, with no way and vision and sight to be able to get there. And then miraculous things happened because I ignored the well-intended advice of people around me that I respected, because I followed what I knew was in my heart and mind. And when it comes to leadership, that's what's very difficult. And I think that's the challenge that people have to recognize. Leadership is not something, I think, to aspire to for the accolades you get from it.
Right.
I think you need to treat it as a responsibility. And if you have that skill set and that ability to do that, because when times are tough, when times are easy and everyone around you is a yes man, it's easy to stick with whatever thing you put out there. Oh, that's great. That's a great. But when everyone is telling you that's the most ridiculous thing you could ever do, have you lost your mind? But you know in your heart that it's true and you're willing to work for it.
Yeah.
Then leadership says, because that's what people, when we told our story, when the founder of CrossFit asked our story, if he could do our story and publish it on YouTube, we had thousands of responses. We had hundreds of people around the world that just reached out to us directly and said, wow, thank you for sharing. You showed light at the end of the tunnel. We recognize that, that we can get through this just like you did. And I think that leadership says, I'm willing to take all of that, right? I don't have any ego. I don't have any self-aggrandizement kind of desires here. I recognize I have a responsibility to take that skill set. I personally don't have a lot of skill sets. That, I think, is one to be able to say, I'm willing to lead the way, and I'm willing to help you come along this path if that's the path you want to take. And I think that's what's really hard.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes is that the enemy of great is good. So in your leadership progression, what did it take to continue to push? Once you get to a certain comfortable place, how do you keep that inspiration and motivation to keep growing?
I think, boy, these are great questions. I'm never comfortable. I'm never comfortable. Nothing is ever satisfactory to me. Not to say that we can't do things and look back and say, wow, that was a great achievement. But in my mind, if you can, for me, at age 55, I've always wanted to be older. I view 60 to 80 as the best, most productive years of my life. I just always have. I can't wait to get older. I'm 5 years from reaching that target I want. So I feel as though I have more capacity based on experience. And so if I have more capacity, when would I settle for status quo? Why would I slow down if I have the ability to do more based on things? Retirement's not an issue for me, it's never been a goal of mine. I am a bit of a workaholic because I enjoy and love the chase. Right. I love going after that. So it's never, I can look at something and say, hey, listen, this was great. And I'm not one to have regrets, though. I don't look back and say, well, I should have done that better. I did it the best I could at the time. But I think if you're talking about leadership and people that are watching on the course, is to say, okay, I went here, but could I go here next? Okay. And could I go there next? And could I? So good is never, good just doesn't exist for me. It's a generic, irrelevant word.
It's interesting because you were just describing a few minutes ago. I actually laughed to myself. I thought maybe he looked at himself and said, this whole entrepreneur thing's not as fun as I thought it was when you hit rock bottom at times. But Rob, how do you figure out how to distill? You said that you had some folks that were trying to help you along or trying to give you advice. You decided not to listen to that advice, but you also have described these books that you've read and these people that are meaningful to you in your life. So how do you, as an entrepreneur, distill through stuff that advice that you should take and and then say, what, I'm going to ignore that advice and I'm going to go on my own path? I mean, how do you balance that?
That's a fine line. For me, I'm a research nut. I'm a reverse engineer kind of guy, and I think that there are those out there that'll tell you that I have respect for what they've achieved. That will say, I don't ever read books. I don't care what anyone else says, and I'm just the opposite. I think I'm interested in knowing everyone's perspective so that I can take an aggregate as I form what my opinion is. I think the difference is that it's easy to be swayed away from a goal or an objective or a desire or a dream that you have if you give too much credibility to what someone says in their path. Let me put it this way. You can cross the line into arrogance, right? And you can cross the line into, I just don't care about anyone else in the world. It's all about me. And that's not what the point I'm making. The point I'm making is really staying true to yourself, which is very hard. If Henry David Thoreau was right and said that most men lead lives of quiet desperation, then most of us carry facades, right? So you strip the facade away. Do you have what it takes to follow the leadership path that you want or follow the desire that you want? Now, do you not ever take advice of people? Please. I mean, obviously, if there are things I don't see. But I think an understanding, for me, when I went through all those years of reading all that, it gave me a foundation because I'm a principle guy. I don't care about, because everything else ebbs and flows, but principles always stay the same. Every leader has very consistent principles. One, stick to what you believe and know, even in the light of others that tell you that it's not possible, it doesn't make sense. And be true to that, right? I mean, these kinds of principles are what have carried me through some of these times when people that I respected, it was hard when everyone else said, that this person, who he is and what he does and, right. and who he's connected with. And I love him. He's a good friend. But I feel passionate about what, the direction I have to go. Then you have to be willing at that point to commit to it. 100% and put the work in. That's the difference. It's
Sure.
easy to say, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be a leader. Okay. But when everyone's against you, can you hang in there? Do you have what that takes? I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a ruthlessness about you, and about every leader that has to be there, right?
Yes. Yeah. I think that that's one of the things that's misunderstood amongst a lot of leaders. Whether it is Donald Trump as president or whether it's a Steve Jobs or whatever it is. I think that there is ruthlessness with no caring for humanity, and then there's ruthlessness in decision-making ability. Right. It's one of the most difficult things for people to do is to cut loose. And every leader through history or people that have really talked about how to grow, they'll tell you, who you are is largely who you surround yourself with. Well, if you surround yourself with people right, these cliches we all have, that are tearing you down, can you leave them? Can you drop them? Can you tell a family member? Can you tell a friend, well, I'm sorry, this doesn't work for me anymore. The ruthlessness side is, again, it's that, for me, I love people more than anything. I love engaging with people. But you have to be willing to make and commit to those decisions. And that can seem ruthless and mean to people that, that person should, or this situation. No, it doesn't work for the end objective of what we're looking for. And that's where leaders, that's probably the hardest thing. You'll never be a people pleaser. If you're a people pleaser, you want to make everyone happy, then you need to go, maybe be a social worker and do great work in, areas where you can really focus on that.
Well, as you move into an industry that's really on the verge of explosive growth in the eSports space and the World Gaming Academy, do you feel some of that same resistance today in a leadership role of bringing forward into the mainstream culture the eSports opportunity?
Well, I think it's easy now. The same thing I saw in the CrossFit world in 2009, I see in the eSports world right now. It's about to explode. The next 10 years will be landmark. I mean, the CEO of Logitech recently said with Jim Cramer, said it'll be the biggest sport in the world within 10, 15 years, maybe 20 years. And I agree with him 100%. So everyone's jumping on the eSports bandwagon. Mm-hmm. It's easy right now. So from that perspective, there's really no pushback. The perspective for me is that everyone's jumping on the wrong bandwagon because, I shouldn't say that. Everyone's trying to go on one bandwagon, and that is technology, venues, because we all operate on the WIFM, right? What's in it for me? And the perspective is online and venues. City of Arlington building this 100,000 square foot, eSports facility. Ohio's doing the same thing. I just read in a smaller one, but another $10 million project.
They're trying to get it into the Olympics.
It'll be in the Olympics in 2024. Paris asked for that in their bid. The IOC is meeting on it right now. What's happening in eSports is going to decimate typical tradition sports over time for lots of different reasons. Well, traditional sports, and we're going to get off that whole subject. That I get really passionate about eSports. I've been a gamer since 1975. But to your point, it's easy to talk about eSports because everyone's ears perk up right now. Our approach at the Gaming Academy is different. Because of my experience for many years in CrossFit, from the HQ level all the way down to an affiliate owner, athlete, and all that, was the community and the people. In the esports world, these gamers, these kids that are growing up in an environment that says, I know that I see people making incomes in a digital world. I don't really know how to do it. They think they do because social media tells them, well, just create a YouTube channel and you'll be ultimately successful. And we say, no, that's not true, right. Including one of my nephews who says this is going to be his year. And I'm saying, no, it's not. I know what you're doing. But so in the World Gaming Academy, we have 3 areas, and I won't go into that right now. The point I want to make is that what I see as being dropped and neglected are these people that would love to have an opportunity to make an income in an environment they know that it's possible in, here's the key for me right now, despite the older generation's resistance to telling them, yeah, go for it. Because the older my generation says to our kids, hey, listen, get a real job, go to school, get a life. And those kids say, hey, but you know what? Colleges now offer scholarships. 900 of them in the U.S. offer scholarships for video gaming. Esports teams are being incorporated in high schools and colleges all over the country and world right now. So the leadership part of that is to say, I'm going to go against the easy thing to do in the tech side, in the online side, in the venue side, in the merchandising side, which professional sports are very good at, and that's why they're all adopting it. And I'm focused on saying, let's gather the community. Let's unlock the passion that they have, put these people together, teach them tangible skills they can leave with, either as a gamer, as an IT support commentator, whatever, tournament prep, or as an affiliate owner. And that is what confuses some people right now, because everyone else in the esports world is looking to capitalize. I'm looking to build legacy around that community.
So, all right, Rob, you got to tell me a little bit about e-gaming. I have to tell you, I don't know that much about it. So here you are, you owned your own CrossFit gyms, and then you got out of that. So I'm assuming that there's some level of, I mean, you've got to be, I guess, in good mental shape to do this. So talk just a little bit about the gaming itself. What makes somebody a good gamer? Do you know anything about gaming?
Well, and kind of how it's evolved too, because I'm an old school gamer. I played Pong on black and white TV through Nintendo and PlayStation and Xbox.
I already had enough.
So I'm kind of a closet gamer.
That's right.
In the group.
Or growing up, you're playing, you're on eSports. There was enough competitiveness being the youngest of 4 brothers trying to get across the goal line the first. So.
Yeah, so what does the professional esports space look like versus what maybe the stereotypical vision of what a gamer is, playing alone in their basement or something?
Yeah, great question. That's most of the imagery associated with video games is that, right? Mountain Dew and Cheetos in my mom's basement.
Right.
Go get a job. I'll tell you right now, just a couple of basic things. Last year, one of the esports level tournaments had more viewership than Game 7 of the NBA Finals. Okay, there's another tournament starting this weekend. Last year did the same thing. It has a $24 million prize purse.
Wow.
The Staples Center in Los Angeles sold out in 1 hour for an esports championship. When we say it's going to be the biggest sport in the world, inclusion in the Olympics and all that, there was an article done in the New York Times, as I remember, that said, the guy was bringing the point, does the Olympics need esports or do esports need the Olympics?
Wow.
And this point was that the Olympics need esports. Why is it? And here's the thing that happened in the CrossFit world, and this is what I'm seeing in the esports world to get to your question. When the CrossFit Games were started and they've kind of evolved, and why people like to watch it, and why the viewership and participation on the back end is so strong, is that it's what I do. When I watch someone lift a barbell in the CrossFit Games, I do that in my local affiliate, my local box, right? It's a connection that's very different. If I watch professional golf or the NFL, I have a good friend that played for the Cowboys, Corey Proctor, and I look at him and say, you know what? No matter what I ever try to do, I'd never make it in the NFL. I'm not 6'5". I wasn't 280 pounds, and I can't do. I don't have a 36-inch vertical at that. So, but I can appreciate the sophistication of the game and the competition and all that. With esports, much like CrossFit, but at a much bigger level, esports is a generation of kids that have grown up and people that have grown up playing, now seeing people do it, the same thing that they're doing. There are more eyeballs connected to esports now than anything. This is probably one of the fastest growing industries in history worldwide. Because people do it. So it's from the professional level, from the athlete professional level, which is now officially by the federal government, esports competitors are considered athletes, to these programs. It's a sophistication that's being, someone wrote recently that for every day that one traditional sports fan dies, 2 esports fans are born. And that's going to be the transition. That's what's going to happen.
Well, I'm curious too about the culture that you're trying to create with the World Gaming Academy. Are there elements of leadership you're hoping to bring to the participants, to your affiliates? You mentioned a little bit about having a greater cause than the typical esports sponsor or business. What elements of development are included in your vision?
Well, I think that's probably the core of where we're at, much like what you're doing with foster kids and wanting to give them opportunities and let them see what the opportunities are and provide some resources there. I'm a very thumb off the neck kind of person. I mean, I want to give you an opportunity. I want to teach you principles, and then you go govern yourself and work hard. Let me give you an environment that helps you understand those principles. In this environment, that's why, I just brought someone on that's going to be our director of player development, and a very talented guy, works with esports teams right now. The number one thing is that we want to bring structure, professionalism, and cohesion to the community. They're already passionate, but you need to come in and live by a code of our standards, which are, you watch your language, you're polite in your play, you're super competitive. I'm super competitive. But I want you to leave in one of those 3 areas that we give you opportunity in to make a career, understanding that you can, because for a lot of people, they have to step away from everything they're being told. not what they see. Their friends are all saying, I can make $1 million in YouTube, or I can be a Twitch streamer, and I can be, Tyler Blevins making $600,000 a month. No, you probably can't, but you can make a career. But with so much societal pushback still right now, 10 years, totally different story. I want these youth or people that want to find a way to make a career, as we provide these 3 opportunities, if it's one of them they choose, to understand, set aside what people are telling you. It will help you legitimize it by showing that you're willing to work hard, because it's not an easy thing to succeed in anything. You're willing to work hard, follow this structure, and prove that you could follow your passion and succeed. And we're going to give you that opportunity in what we do. That's kind of the vision.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure visiting with you today, Rob, and appreciate your insights on leadership. There is a question we like to ask each guest, and you've shared a little bit about this so far, but I'd like to know if you could identify the most valuable book on leadership that you've read, and a key takeaway that has been very instrumental to your success.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
Can you narrow it down?
I have about a top 30. In different segments. I would say probably the one that first comes to mind is Og Mandino's Greatest Salesman in the World. Outstanding because it's a principle-based book. It's not what you expect.
Okay.
It really teaches you to understand that it's all about relationships. It's humanity. It's working hard. It's understanding that, I'm a big believer in Zig Ziglar, and it ties into the same thing. Look, you can have anything you want out of life if you're willing to help enough other people get what they want. We've all heard that 100 times. It's very difficult to do. If you can learn to do that, that's what I pull out from this. If you can sit in a situation and say, if I help you achieve what you want to achieve, and that's my focus 100%, as a byproduct, I'm going to get everything I want and more.
Yeah, that's powerful.
But I think it started with Og Mandino.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure to visit with you. I really appreciate you making the time to come on the show today.
Thank you.
If any of our listeners want to learn more about you, how can they follow you?
Easy. Yeah. So worldgamingacademy.com. We're all over social media. World Gaming Academy. This is pre-launch. We're about to launch and open our first facility. But if you look up World Gaming Academy, it's unique enough. We would love for everyone, to follow, to give us comments, feedback. We're a very open forum, and so we'd love to hear from you.
Great. Well, it's time to turn it back over to Blair to hear the answer to our trivia question for the day.
Yeah, I picked a good one because we're in the tech world, right? And, it's pretty good. So the question was about an adoptive young man who had to drop out of college, but started a little database project that he affectionately called Oracle. Clue right there, right?
That was the giveaway.
That's the giveaway right there. So our trivia person leadership is none other than Larry Ellison, and quite a wealthy man now, and the company he founded, co-founder, former CEO of Oracle. So,
very good. Well, that is a wrap for today's episode. I want to thank again our guest, Rob Davis, and to my co-hosts, Blair Ritchie and Tyler Tallman. This is Jason Smith. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, then you are a leader. Thanks for listening.
Legends in Leadership is brought to you by ISF and Carrington Group. ISF is committed to leadership development for aged-out foster care and orphan youth. ISF's mission is to transform these youth into tomorrow's leaders with scholarships, mentoring, and leadership training. Google International Student Foundation to learn more. Carrington Group is a family office with a passion for helping business leaders and their families make smart choices and fulfill their highest aspirations. Google Carrington Group Dallas, Texas to learn more.
Securities offered through Regulus Advisors, LLC. Member FINRA/SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Regal Investment Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Regulus Advisors and Regal Investment Advisors are affiliated entities. Carrington Group and this broadcast are independent of Regulus Advisors and Regal Investment Advisors.